During the 7th year of his reign, between April 598 and March 597 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar established his rule to the southern part of Hatuland. He probably began to stabilize and organize administration and garrisons that collected taxes from the local provinces and vassal kingdoms. In my opinion, this is the reason why in the 8th year of his rule, in January 586 BCE, he was able to contend with only short expedition reaching only up to Carchemish. He apparently accepted the taxes there and returned to Babylon 1 month later. During this time, difficulties in other regions began to bother Nebuchadnezzar. At some unknown date in his 9th year, which is between April 596 and mid-April 595 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar was forced to go out to a campaign along the bank of the Tigris, confronting the king of Elam. According to the Babylonian Chronicle, the king of Elam was intimidated by the might of the Babylonian army and returned to his own land. However, the necessity of mounting a campaign in the region attests to the problems that the Babylonians were having along the eastern border of the empire. Even more difficult problems awaited Nebuchadnezzar in the next year, the 10th year of his reign. According to the Babylonian Chronicle, there was a revolt in Babylon that lasted for the months of Kislev until the months of Tevet, from mid-December 595 to mid-February 594 BCE. This revolt was suppressed only when Nebuchadnezzar ordered the execution of many of his own army and personally trapped his enemy, whose identity is not clear. It is likely that it was in the period of time, and perhaps against the background of these signs of weakness, that stability in Hatuland began to be undermined. In Egypt, Psamtichus II ascended the throne in 595 BCE. His expedition to Nubia in 593 BCE was perceived as a resounding military success. His expedition to the Phoenician coast 1 year later, probably by sea, impressed the kingdoms of the region even more. The small local kingdoms, who still remembered the Egyptian rule in the region that was halted less than 10 years before, believed in the Egyptians' ability to return to a position of power. It is probable that the strengthening of Egypt and the activist foreign policy of Psammetichus encouraged the anti-Babylonian treaty of the kings of Edom, Moab, Ammon, Tyre, Sidon, and Judah. We know about it since it's in the background of one of the symbolic messages of Jeremiah. The date in the title of this prophecy is wrong. You can read it in chapter 27, verse 1. And it can't be dated to the time of King Jehoiakim, since in the prophecy itself, it stated that it occurs during the time of Zedekiah. The event in the background of this prophecy is a meeting of all the representatives of the vassal kingdoms in the region. And let me read. I'm reading verse 2 and 3. כה אמר אדוני אלי, עשה לך מוסרות ומוטות, ונתתם על צווארך, ושילחתם אל מלך אדום, ואל מלך מואב, ואל מלך בני עמון, ואל מלך צור, ואל מלך צידון, ביד מלאכים הבאים ירושלים, אל צדקיהו מלך יהודה. The symbolic act of Jeremiah aims toward the message of accepting the Babylonian yoke, with a warning that any act of revolt or attempt to break the Babylonian yoke is against the will of God and will cause the disastrous results. Have a look in verse 8. והיה הגוי והממלכה, אשר לא יעבדו אותו את נבוכדנצר מלך בבל, ואת אשר לא ייתן את צווארו בעול מלך בבל, בחרב וברעב ובדבר אפקוד על הגוי ההוא נאום אדוני, עד תומי אותם בידו. In verse 9 to 11, Jeremiah is warning the representatives of the vassal kings from all kind of false prophecies and hopes for the fall of Babylonian rule in the Levant. ואתם אל תשמעו אל נביאיכם ואל קוסמיכם ואל חלומותיכם ואל עונניכם ואל כשפיכם אשר הם אומרים אליכם לאמור לא תעבדו את מלך בבל כי שקר הם ניבאים לכם למען הרחיק אתכם מעל אדמתכם, והידחתי אתכם ועבדתם. והגוי אשר יביא את צווארו בעול מלך בבל ועבדו, והנחתיו על אדמתו נאום אדוני, ועבדה וישב בה. In verse 12, Jeremiah is focusing his message to Zedekiah, the king of Judah, and warns him. ואל צדקיה מלך יהודה דיברתי, ככל הדברים האלה לאמור. הביאו את צוואריכם בעול מלך בבל, ועבדו אותו, ועמו וחיו. The anti-Babylonian pact of the kings of Edom, Moab, Ammon, Tyre, Sidon, and Judah was a move that could not have happened without Egyptian support. Accounts of an agreement between Judah and Egypt in the final years of Zedekiah's reign support the assumptions regarding Egypt's role in undermining the stability of the region. In Ezekiel 17, verse 15, there is a description and condemnation of Zedekiah for breaking his personal oath of alliance to Nebuchadnezzar. וימרוד בו לשלוח מלאכיו מצרים לתת לו סוסים ועם רב. היצלח? הימלט העושה אלה והפר ברית ונמלט? The Egyptian army probably came to assist Judah during the Babylonian siege on Jerusalem. Jeremiah 37 verses 5 to 11 mentions an Egyptian campaign to Judah at the height of the Babylonian siege and describing that there was a break in the siege when the Babylonian army left Jerusalem to an unknown place in order to face the Egyptians. וחיל פרעה יצא ממצרים, וישמעו הכסדים הצרים על ירושלים את שמעם, ויעלו מעל ירושלים. Ostracon number 3 from Lachish, lines 14-15, contains a description of a journey to Egypt of Koneiah son of Elnatan, a commander in the Judahite army, apparently in the 9th year of Zedekiah's rule, the year the revolt was declared against Babylon. This is the backdrop for understanding why Nebuchadnezzar was so anxious to leave for Chatuland in the winter of 594 BCE, immediately after suppressing the revolt in Babylon and stabilizing his rule. According to the description in the Babylonian Chronicle, the king and probably also the governors of Chatuland expressed their loyalty to him, he had received their tribute, and he returned to Babylon. In my opinion, this expedition was also connected with the rise of Psammetichus II to the throne in Egypt. An additional reason for the expedition was Nebuchadnezzar's need to prove to his garrison forces in the region that his authority over Chatuland and Babylon were firm and stable, and that the signs of domestic instability were finished. Nebuchadnezzar made another campaign in the months of Kislev, of the 11th year of his reign, November 594 BCE, but the Babylonian Chronicle contains no other information about it. In this point, I am taking a small time out in order to let you know that the Babylonian Chronicles were cut off in the 11th year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign for 37 years. The next known segment of the Chronicle is describing the events that transpired in 557 BCE. It means that the reconstruction of all the events around the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple will be done without the information from the Babylonian side. We will feel the absence of this information very much in our reconstructions.